Welcome to everyone who's just joining. We'll just give it a couple of minutes to let people come in. I can see the numbers creeping up a little bit in terms of participants. Those of you just joining, we'll just give it another minute to allow people to kind of come in at the beginning of the meeting. Can see numbers still creeping up. Okay, let's get started. Well, first of all, welcome to this EDICa webinar. I'm Catherine Souch. I'm one of the co-PIs on the project, and I'm delighted to be chairing this particular webinar, and I'm delighted to welcome our speaker today, Yasi Sarabi. I've got a few things just to run through first in terms of a little bit of kind of housekeeping. I can see people, there are more people still just arriving now, so we'll just pause for another second. Sorry about this. Great. Okay. We'll run through the kind of the preamble in terms of setting the scene for this particular seminar. Just for those who've just joined, I'm Catherine Souch. I'm one of the co-PIs on the project, and I'm delighted to be chairing today's seminar. Just a quick reminder to all of you, you'll have been aware of this when you signed up to the webinar. We do have a code of conduct. We adhere to this very closely. We won't tolerate any kind of harassment in this event in any form, and should anything go awry with that, obviously we'll expel people from this particular event. Just a quick note also about accessibility. If it's helpful to you, please activate the closed captions by clicking on the three dots at the bottom of your Zoom screen and selecting the closed caption option, if that makes it a little bit easier for you to do too. Just in terms of how this event's going to run today, please, if you don't mind, could you use the Q&A function to type in questions? Most of you will be very familiar with this platform, and you'll know that you can upvote a question that you want answered most, and we'll prioritize those questions at the end. I think we're going to have a short introduction by me, very short, but a 20-30 minute presentation, so there should be plenty of time for question and answers at the end. Chat is also enabled for kind of a community discussion. And again, just a reminder of the code of conduct on that. So we've got the presentation followed by Q&A, but if you could put the questions into the Q&A function, that would be great, please. So hopefully you're aware of the EDICa caucus, the EDI caucus, and where, if you're not, a very quick introduction. The caucus is an initiative that's funded by the UK Research and Innovation, UKRI, and it's about researching the evidence base for inclusive careers, working on initiatives and programs and activities to remove barriers experienced by marginalised groups, and encouraging practices that support them to access and thrive. We're really committed to interdisciplinarity and interdisciplinary research, very much focused on creating national, international communities of practice. And at the core of EDICa is an ethos of co-design and a co-design approach with all the stakeholders and people with lived experience. As part of that EDICa caucus, we have this research method series. I'm delighted that this is what Yasi is going to be presenting in today, where we're trying to kind of bring to the fore and make sure that we're equipping researchers and practitioners with the tools, the frameworks, the approaches necessary to critically analyse and address EDI issues. If you're interested in upcoming events, we've got a series of upcoming events that we'll put up a list in just a moment, and then we'll also share these in the chat around quite a wide range of research methods. We've got one coming up in July on machine learning and gender, seminar in September, which focuses particularly on Black women's academics experiences. October, co-production in the context of neurodiversity, and then also events around EDI plan and the program of work around menstruation and menstrual health, the menstruation at the margins on the 24th of September. These events and past events are all online. They're recorded and they're published on the EDICa YouTube channel, and you can also access them through the website. And then the final slide to show is about the resource bank, the website, the resources, where you can find these webinars and also a wealth of other briefings, research, blogs on various different topics that the caucus and the community more generally, the community of practice, have been working on. If you're interested in anything more about this, then please do get in touch with the EDICa caucus, post questions in the chat, and we'll pick those up now or after the event. But the purpose of today, I'm absolutely delighted to be introducing Dr. Yasaman Sarabi, Yasi, who's going to present to us today on her work on social network analysis. So over to you, Yasi.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen before starting. Could you please let me know if you can see this presentation?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here today to talk to you about our research on gender diversity in UK-funded research projects. In particular, we're talking today about a study that we've done on gender diversity and production activity, where we analysed the setting of the STEM in the UK. The study makes use of social network analysis techniques, and what we would like to demonstrate through this presentation and through the study is how social network analysis can be used to tackle research questions in equality, diversity, and inclusion research. So just very quickly, what we are going to talk about today, I'm just going to give you some background to this study, focusing on underrepresentation of women in STEM, and this frameworks that have been applied in the existing literature. Then we will go on to discuss the research aims of the study and the research questions, and followed by a discussion of the data. The data mainly would be a description of the UK STEM projects and where we got the data, and a discussion on gateway to research. Then talking about the methods that we used in the study, as we said, specifically social network analysis, and obviously the main findings and some concluding comments at the end. So as many of you are aware, and it can be glaringly obvious depending on the setting that you have worked and in certain teams, within the academic labor force, the underrepresentation of women remains an important issue. This issue is particularly prominent in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, so the STEM subjects. Much of the literature attributes the disadvantage of women in academia, especially in STEM, to a number of key factors. And those are disproportionate pressure to balance educational plans with non-academic responsibilities, for example, family care, the increased likelihood of experiencing isolation and exclusion during their careers for women, and also the lack of supportive social networks, which can be usually male-dominated for the women. One of the key frameworks that has emerged to explain the gender gap in STEM is the leaky pipeline approach. The leaky pipeline is a term to describe the loss of women in the STEM career progression pathway from school all the way to senior positions within the field. The literature that draws on this approach attempts to map the pipeline for different disciplines, trying to identify opportunities for promoting gender diversity and stopping the leak of capable women from the field. The figure that you can see on the slide on the right-hand side, it provides a visual representation of the leaky pipeline in the medical sciences. And it shows that the leaky pipeline can result in a lack of women leaders and mentors in the discipline as they continue to leak through the pipes. The framework is obviously not without criticism. Some scholars note that this specific framework often fails to explain the experiences of women that are remaining in the pipeline, such as those who receive doctorates in the sciences, for example. There are other scholars that argue that the academic system is not a pipeline. For example, Windsor and colleagues suggest that rather than a pipeline, it's a game of academic chutes and ladders, or snakes and ladders. They note that the academic system is not a pipeline that women leak out of. Rather, it's a hierarchical structure with a hidden curriculum, the unwritten rules linked to the traditional roots of academic advancement, and also hidden shortcuts. Men, as they're more likely to have access to the shortcuts or the ladders, and women are more likely to be vulnerable to academic chutes or academic snakes as a result of various factors, for example, the significant changes that they might experience in their personal and professional circumstances, getting pregnant, going on maternity leave, and also the bias in hiring or promotion committees, or gender harassment that they might experience at their places of work. So there are a number of studies that examine the role of gender in the formation of collaborative ties within sciences. There is a study specifically that discusses the role of gender homophily in the sciences, for example. The study finds that homophily underpins many patterns of collaboration amongst among men scientists, where men researchers are more likely to collaborate with men. But the study found that this is not the case with women. They're not likely to collaborate with other women. So building on everything within the literature, this study had two main research aims. The first one was to examine the link between the publication success of publicly funded research project in the sciences and gender, whether increased gender diversity is associated with a project with increased publication success. Funded research projects have been found to be associated with an increased number of publications, and in some cases, more highly cited publications as well, when compared to the projects that are not funded. However, extant work has found that the impact of participating and leading funded research project differs from men to women, especially for more junior academics. The study also aimed to investigate how collaborative arrangements impact the publication success of a project. Research projects often consist of collaborative arrangements that involve a wide range of institutions that could be academic or non-academic. And collaborative ties represent an important component of research and innovation activity. We examined whether these collaborative arrangements and holding a central position in the research funding space is more important for women academics compared to men, and more specifically, whether holding a central position in the collaborative space is more important for women principal investigators, so the PIs of the project, compared to their men counterparts. This was because the the previous research has use and benefit from their networks. So the following research questions were at the core of this study. Whether a project with high proportion of women is associated with publishing in journals with a higher journal score, whether having a woman PI is associated with publishing in journals with a higher journal score, whether the network centrality, which I will explain in the next few slides, associated with publishing in journals with higher journal scores, and whether network centrality is more important for publishing in such higher ranked journals when the project has a woman PI. Now, talking about the data, we draw on the data from the Gateway to Research platform, which provides data on UK Research Council funded projects. So the Gateway to Research, GTR, provides information on the funder of a project, the level of funding, project duration, project partner at both organizational and individual level, and project outcomes. So these would be the publications, the patents, the spin-outs, policy impacts, or even further funding associated to a specific project. Because we wanted to focus on STEM in this study, we restricted our analysis to research grants funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, so the EPSRC. EPSRC focuses on various disciplines within the sciences, healthcare and technologies, structural engineering, manufacturing, mathematics, advanced materials, and chemistry, to name a few. And it's the largest public funder in the UK for scientific research and research related to innovation activities. So in the next few slides, I would like to talk a little bit more about the Gateway to Research platform. And I should mention that for this study, we extracted the data programmatically using the GTR API. So this is the main search page for GTR. You can see the search platform, relatively intuitive and quite straightforward to follow. We searched for the term equality, diversity, and inclusion, and this is the results of the search. The results can be exported to CSV. There are a number of filters that you can apply to your search. For example, the project status, as you can see on the right-hand side, the amount that was funded, region, project type, whether it was a research grant, for example, and various other filters. When you click on a project specifically, you can see the full information associated to that project, and the information that you can see ranges from the main funding details to the project partners, as we said, both at individual and institutional level, project outcomes, so again, such as patents, spin-offs, articles, and so on and so forth. When collecting the data, we use the GTR API. This allows an efficient extraction of the relevant data compared to manual intervention. So it makes your life a bit easier. So the data that we got at the end was we examined the research grants project ending in a 10-year period. So the projects with an end date between 2010 and 2019 that were funded by EPSRC. There were almost 10,000 projects included in our data set, with around 12,000 individuals The focus is on closed projects because we were interested in the outcomes which can occur after the project closes. So that's why we focused on closed projects. The metric that we use to capture the quality of the journal in the study is the Simego journal rank indicator. So it's a measure of journal prestige that takes into account both the number of the citations that a journal receives and also the prestige level of the citing journals. An average SJR metric was calculated for each project, looking at both the looking at the academic outputs of each of the projects that we included in our work. So to specifically examine the interplay between network centrality and project performance, we mapped two networks. The first network is an individual project network. So the nodes in the network, so the little dots in the network that I will show you soon, are academics. These are co-Is and PIs of the project. And if there's a tie between them, it indicates that an academic is affiliated with a project, is part of the project team. The second network that we mapped is an organization project network. So here the organizations represent both academics and non-academic institutions, and a tie represents the organizations working on a particular project. So using these two networks, mapping these new networks, gave us a sort of a holistic idea of our data, and gave us the opportunity to examine the impact of network ties on publication performance. Network analysis is an established technique that has been widely applied to understand collaboration at both individual and organizational levels, which is aligned with what we wanted to do in this study. So I mentioned centrality measures earlier, so I'm just going to quickly give you an introduction to what centrality metrics are. Centrality metrics in social network analysis are used to specifically discuss the importance of a node, of an entity within an overall network. So we use them to assess the interplay between network position and project performance in our study. We draw on two types of centrality metrics. There are various types of centrality metrics available. We use the betweenness centrality. So this is the number of times that an actor sits on the shortest path between two other actors in the network. It captures an actor's brokerage in a network. In the individual network, the high betweenness centrality indicates that an individual has access to a wide variety of diverse information and is beneficial for their innovation and research activity. We also made use of eigenvector centrality. Actors in a network where they have high eigenvector centrality are connected to other well-connected networks, actors in the network. In this empirical setting of this study, this measure can be viewed as a measure of individual or project prestige. So you can see on the figure on the slide on the right-hand side, these centrality measures being represented visually. We have used these centrality measures, as I said, to identify different actors as that could be important within our networks. We do not draw on the most simple centrality measure in social network analysis, the degree centrality, which is only the count of the number of ties that you have in a network. because we believe that Bitvenus and eigenvector were more sophisticated, and they gave us a more nuanced measure of importance when considering these specific networks. So there are several independent variables that we included in the research, so it was not all about network variables. We included the project value and project duration as controls for the project that receive more funding and are active for longer periods of time. We also had the PI gender. This was a dummy variable specifically, one indicating the PI was a woman and 0 if the PI was a man. The proportion of women on the team is also included in the model specification in order to address the first research question specifically. We also had another dummy, whether the lead academic organization is a member of the Russell Group. So the Russell Group, as you know, is a set of UK universities that focus on research-intensive activities, and they do receive the largest share of government funding. So we use this dummy variable to examine whether a project links to an entrepreneurial, research-focused university and is associated with an increased publication success. We included proportion of non-academic partners and organizations out of all organizations in collaborating on a specific project to capture whether a project with a high number of non-academics, non-academic organizations can potentially do better in terms of the quality of publication success. And to address our third research question, we specified a number of centrality effects in the model. So eigenvector and Bitvenus, excuse me, centrality for the project network and the individual network that I introduced to you. And for the final research question, we included a set of interaction effects. So we interacted the network centrality with the woman PI dummy variable to examine whether network centrality is more significant for projects that have a woman lead. So this is the organization project network. As I said, the data was quite big, so I'm not sure how much detail you can actually see. Organizations are represented in green. The projects are colored on the basis of the gender of the PI. So projects with a woman PI are red, and projects with a male PI are black. The projects are blue, women red, and males are in black. So in both of these networks, the issue of gender diversity in STEM is very clear. You can see that the majority of the projects are led by males, and the majority of individuals that are involved in EPSRC research projects are also men. So in both of the networks, so and the individual project network and the organization project network, we can observe what we call a core periphery structure. So we have a set of tightly connected projects representing shared organizations collaborating on the projects in the middle, and then sparsely connected projects on the periphery. Just flick back to the other one so you can see the comparison. So we looked at some of the descriptive statistics for the key features of these projects. The average number of journal articles is around 12 published per project, but there's a high level of variance. The mean project duration was almost about 3. A research project has collaborators at the organizational level. and these include universities, but also there were non-academic organizations as collaborators. On average, out of the total number of institutions working on a project, 38% were non-academic. There's a high level of variation in the average journal quality for project outputs. This was where we used the SJR metric, and a high level of variation was observed in the network metrics scores, as indicated by the high standard deviation, suggesting that the level of prestige represented by the eigenvector centrality and opportunity represented by the betweenness centrality are concentrated in a small handful. This confirms what we noted in the network visualizations, where we observed a core periphery structure for both of the networks. So I'm not going to go over the numbers in the next few slides one by one. I'm just going to highlight the main findings that we can see. So this is the first set of our regression models. These are the ones without the interaction effects that I mentioned. They include one without centrality variables or the PI gender variables, another with the PI gender variable, and the subsequent ones are for the four metrics of centrality: project betweenness, project eigenvector, PI betweenness, and PI eigenvector. So across the models, the project value and duration are consistently showing positive and significant results. So longer projects with more funding, more time and resources essentially, are associated with publication in journals with higher SJR scores, which is, well, not that surprising, not a very surprising result. The Russell Group effect, which indicates whether the lead university on a project is a member of an entrepreneurial research-focused setup university, also indicates that if a project is led by a Russell Group institution, it is associated with an output in a higher ranked journal based on the metric that we used. This is again in line with expectations from the literature, which have often used the Russell Group as sort of a proxy for high-ranking, innovative, and entrepreneurial universities. Talking about gender diversity, we can see some indication from the results that's aligned with the existing research, suggesting that in men-dominated fields, the performance benefits of gender diverse teams are not fully realized due to additional integration challenges, perhaps. Looking at the centrality effects, we can see that the results suggest that central prestigious projects are more likely to produce outputs that are published in journals with higher SJR scores. The project centrality is based on the project organization network, and this result suggests that projects linked to well-connected organizations are associated with higher SJR scores. This could indicate that organizational resources rather than the individual personal collaboration networks are more important for publication results as we measured them by the SJR matrix. Apologies. These are the regression models with the interaction effects, where we use the centrality metrics and we interacted them with a PI gender. This was specifically to examine whether centrality impacts the project performance in a different way when there is a woman PI for the project. Are women more likely to tap into their network to increase the average SJR score of the project, let's say? For the majority of the models, we don't see a lot of indication for what we wanted to discuss with a research question. For both the baseline and the interaction effects, we don't really see significant results. Project eigenvector centrality is one that we can mention. But again, the interaction effect is non-significant. There is some negative significant interaction effect between the PI betweenness centrality, so indicating that a project with a woman PI with a higher betweenness centrality is associated with a lower average SJR score for publication output. So this could potentially suggest that women PIs do not necessarily gain any advantage or opportunity from their betweenness centrality and their brokering positions, essentially, compared to their male men counterparts. So the most notable issue from what we saw in the descriptive statistics and the network visualizations, even before we went to the model and the models discussions, was that there's an apparent lack of women representation on research projects. So over 70% of the projects had no women representation, and less than 15% actually had women leads. So the positive impact of women on a scientific team to be realized, for it to be realized, there needs to be a critical mass of women on the teams, which is something that we don't see in the data at all. So empirical work has found that women are more likely to participate in scientific teams when there are more women members on the team. And further empirical work has noted that in men-dominated professions, such as STEM, gender diversity can have a negative impact, as women in these areas face even greater integration challenges. And this seems to be the case for what we see in this study. The low levels of women representation suggest that there's a need for policies that not only encourage but guarantee women's equitable participation in all areas of STEM in the UK research-funded projects. As these projects do not only represent research interest, but represent key, potentially career-defining opportunities in the workplace, that can be a stepping stone to upper management positions. This is even more important. Such a practice could result in an increase in the representation of women in key positions within STEM, and maybe the first step in patching what we call the leaky pipeline. In addition to that, this could help overcome other issues in STEM, such as the men-dominated culture, and it could help reduce the barriers that prevents women from reaching top academic positions. So the study has obviously a number of limitations. Therefore, there are a lot of opportunities to develop this further in future research. One thing is to explore other measures of project performance. There are a variety of other outcomes in Gateway to Research that could be used to measure project performance, such as whether a project received follow-up funding, for example, whether it produced a patent, produced a spin-off, and some aggregation of multiple outputs could also be considered. We could also expand this research to other disciplines. Are these patterns observed outside of STEM? We could explore the analysis to a different research council, for example, ESRC or AHRC. And alternatively, we can unpack the STEM disciplines rather than treating STEM as a single category, essentially. You could draw on the Gateway to Research data to better understand how collaborator selection for funding applications is associated with improved performance for women researchers, for example. And finally, one thing to mention is that because this was such a big data set, we used specific criteria for saying whether project, an individual on a project is a woman, excuse me, or a man. But this approach has many limitations, obviously. So we have looked at diversity in a very specific, restrictive way, let's say. Thank you very much. These are some of the references that we have used and are linked to the research. And thank you for listening. And if you want to read more about the study, the paper is online. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or listen to any feedback that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yasi. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really clear and really important topic. So I'm going to encourage the participants at this stage to post any questions they might have into the chat. And I know that will take a little bit of time. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to lead off with a couple of questions first, and then to see the questions coming. I was really interested with your kind of conclusions and some of the things you were saying at the end. And you talked about the need for policies, and you sort of suggested there was a need for interventions, particularly in this realm of STEM and particularly in the realm of EPSRC funding. Clearly, those interventions can come in lots of different places. But what recommendations would you have for funders? If you were giving this presentation to EPSRC, what policies would you like them to see enact to address this issue of underrepresentation and that issue of connectedness and networks?
So one thing to mention is that obviously we could be looking at the lack of representation of women in these specific EPSRC funded projects because there are actually not as many women and as men in the STEM projects. So even before giving EPSRC recommendations, perhaps we should be looking at what happens when women go into the STEM projects for education, and what happens through their career and all that. Why do we not get as many going into academia, let's say? And then for EPSRC specifically, maybe one thing is to look at the early career researchers. So perhaps encouraging the funding councils to provide more opportunities for ECRs would be a way forward. Perhaps the culture has sort of changed, and we have more ECRs that are women in the field, and perhaps there could be more opportunities for them. We could also have specialized small grants to build sort of diverse networks with focus on ECRs to build capacity for the future as well. So some things maybe.
No, excellent. No, excellent. I think no, I mean, in the sense of you're kind of revealing a really important pattern and trend, well, different patterns in terms of participation, but also those social networks. And I think that's important to be able to take directly then to a funder in terms of what they can do. Also at the end, you signaled there were lots of different directions this research could go. Where's your research going at the moment? Where are you going next with this kind of work and project and approach?
So I'm particularly interested in the issue of how women can tap into their networks to help them progress their career at the moment. So one of the things that I'm really interested in and I'm trying to look at the moment is what we call the research rock stars. So people who keep getting funding over and over again, and how being associated to these prominent scholars would help someone's career, but with a specific vision to look at how women can progress their careers by being associated to essentially research rock stars, taking them to a place where they are themselves research rock stars.
I love that idea, and I'm sure there are some academics who'd love to be referred to as a research rock star.
Why not?
There's a great question that's come in from Miranda Raven. Do you have any advice for EDI practitioners who are not researchers or necessarily from a research background, wanting to learn how to use social network analysis other than collaborating with researchers such as yourself who do? So I guess this is a question is about, more generally about, are these tools just for researchers, or how can they be opened up to practitioners more generally? It's a very good question.
No, so I wouldn't say SNA, social network analysis, is restricted to be used by researchers. You have, well, we see a wide variety of communities using SNA these days, especially as access to software packages has changed over the years. So there are a lot of resources available if someone wants to get started, and these resources are not always strictly academic. So we do have a social network analysis in Scotland research group. The research group consists of academics only, but we do offer talks, seminars every month. And we have a talk where someone comes and talks about their research. This is from every discipline. So sometimes we do have practitioners coming and talking about the use of SNA in their work. And we also have some training sessions for people who want to get started. Using SNA as a tool specifically can be quite user-friendly for people who are not academics. So you can definitely look into these resources. When looking at the social network analysis in the Scotland group, if you Google it, you'll see the website. There is also a Moodle hub, an open Moodle hub that we have through that network, where we provide different sort of introduction to various bits of SNA that people might find interesting when they are starting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And maybe when we put this webinar up online, we can pull together a few of those links and resources as well to be able to share. But Miranda, thank you for your question. Are there other questions from those in attendance who'd like to ask at this stage? Okay, I think you gave an excellent presentation. You were very clear. I think that's partially why there aren't any questions. I think people are thinking about this and thinking about both what your results are and the implications of those results, and maybe how we can take this back in our own work and think about how we can start to, as you provoked us to think about some interventions to sort of disrupt this a little bit, to increase women's participation and to enhance their networks and their networks in terms of their impact, to build those networks as you suggested. So I think plenty for us to go away and think about. So thank you so much for a really clear, excellent presentation. I think you've done a really nice job of kind of bringing to the fore a method. This is the research method series, and how it can answer and provoke us to ask some really important questions. So Yasi, thank you so much on behalf of the caucus, and really, really appreciated. And I'm sure everyone in the call is kind of virtually doing this right now if we're in a room. But thank you so much for a great seminar.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
And thank you everyone for joining us. There'll be some more seminars coming. Please do keep updated by looking at the website, receiving the newsletters, and join us at the next events. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.